The words hit him like a thunderclap in a silent boardroom. Asterisk. Step away from my son. Ethan Carter, billionaire CEO of NeuralNet Innovations. A man who'd stared down tech titans and swayed global markets with a single tweet on X, stood frozen in a Napa Valley garden. The woman before him, her eyes blazing with a mix of shock and maternal ferocity, was Lila Harper, the love he'd lost 5 years ago, the one he'd never stopped dreaming of. And the boy clinging to her side, with eyes that mirrored Ethan's own, was about to unravel his carefully constructed world. Welcome to Legacy Stories, where tales come alive and hearts find their way home. I'm your narrator, weaving narratives that linger long after the final word. If you're new here, buckle up for a journey that'll tug at your soul. To my loyal subscribers, your support fuels these stories. Thank you for being part of this family. Today's tale is one of rediscovery, redemption, and the unexpected magic of second chances. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join us. Now, let's dive into the story of Ethan Carter, a man who thought he had everything until he realized he had nothing at all. Ethan Carter adjusted the titanium cufflinks on his bespoke Tom Ford suit for the third time in 10 minutes. His bore fingers betraying a restlessness he'd trained himself to suppress. The wedding reception at Chateau Montelena in Napa Valley swirled around him, a kaleidoscope of clinking champagne flutes, jazz notes floating from a live quartet, and laughter that felt like a foreign language. The late afternoon sun bathed the vineyard in golden hues, casting long shadows over tables adorned with white orchids and artisanal charcuterie boards. Guests, a mix of Silicon Valley elites and eclectic locals, mingled under string lights that promised to sparkle as dusk settled. It was the kind of scene that screamed California opulence, the kind of event Ethan would have scrolled past on X without a second glance. He glanced at his Patek Philippe watch. 4:47 p.m. Exactly 37 minutes remained before he could fulfill his social obligation to Lucas Bennett, his college roommate turned venture capitalist, and escape back to his San Francisco penthouse. There, silence was his ally, and emotions were locked away in a vault he'd built brick by brick over the past decade. Ethan calculated his exit strategy with the precision of a neural network algorithm, his mind already drifting to the next board meeting, the next X post to counter a brewing PR crisis about NeuralNet's data practices. His company, a leader in AI-driven analytics, was at a tipping point. In 2025, the tech world was a battlefield, with NeuralNet fending off competitors like XAI and dodging scrutiny from regulators and X-influencers alike. A recent thread on X, accusing NeuralNet of exploiting user data for its predictive models, had gone viral, amassing 2.3 million views in 48 hours. Ethan's PR team was in overdrive, and his phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one a reminder of the empire he built and the tightrope he walked to keep it standing. Ethan, there you are, man. Lucas Bennett appeared at his side, a glass of Napa Valley Cabernet in hand, his grin wide and slightly tipsy. His tailored navy suit was wrinkled from too many hugs, his tie loosened in the carefree spirit of a groom's best friend. I can't believe you actually showed up. Emma and I had a bet going. I said you'd come. She said you'd send a drone with a gift instead. Ethan's smile was a masterpiece of practice, the one that had sealed billion-dollar deals and convinced investors he cared about their ESG reports. I said I'd be here, didn't I? His voice was smooth, controlled, betraying none of the impatience simmering beneath. Lucas clapped him on the shoulder, undeterred. You know, you should try this thing called fun sometime. It's trending hard in 2025. He gestured toward the dance floor, where couples swayed to a sultry rendition of At Last. A diverse crowd, tech moguls in minimalist chic, local artists in bohemian flair, and a few Gen Z influencers snapping content for X filled the space with vibrant energy. My cousin Olivia's here, single, runs a sustainable fashion startup. You two would... I'm good. Thanks. Ethan's tone was polite but final. A verbal door slammed shut. Relationships, he'd learned, were just another form of merger high risk, low reward. He'd had enough failed partnerships to know he wasn't built for the long-term contracts of love. Lucas studied him, his eyes narrowing with the insight of someone who'd known Ethan since their Stanford days, when they'd stayed up late coding apps and debating Nietzsche over cheap beer. College Ethan would have been tearing up that dance floor, probably serenading some girl with a guitar. What happened to that guy? He got successful, Ethan replied, the word sharper than intended. He softened his voice, forcing the smile back. I'm happy for you, Lucas, really. But this, he gestured vaguely at the celebration, isn't my scene. It used to be. Lucas's voice held a trace of regret, but before Ethan could respond, Emma, radiant in her lace gown, pulled Lucas away to greet another guest. The words lingered like smoke, curling around memories Ethan had buried deep in college. Ethan had been different, a dreamer who believed in love stories and late-night talks about changing the world. He'd spent hours with a girl who'd made him feel like he could have it all. Success, love, a life that meant something beyond stock options. But that was before he'd learned that empires required sacrifice, that love was a luxury he couldn't afford if he wanted to build NeuralNet into a global force. The memory tried to surface, but Ethan pushed it down with the ruthlessness he applied to hostile takeovers, filing it away in a mental folder labeled irrelevant. He was halfway through, calculating his exit 32 minutes left, when a sound pierced the festive hum like a glitch in a perfectly coded program. A child's cry, soft but piercing, not the tantrum of a toddler but the quiet, heartbreaking sob of genuine distress. Ethan's head snapped up, his businessman's instinct for problem-solving kicking in despite himself. He scanned the crowd, his eyes landing on a small figure near the garden's marble fountain, partially hidden by a cascade of white roses and lavender sprigs. The boy couldn't have been more than 5, dressed in a tiny black tuxedo that hung slightly too big on his frame. His bow tie was askew, and in his small hands he clutched a deflated balloon, its once vibrant red now a sad, wilted gray. Ethan's first instinct was to look for the boy's parents, someone else's problem, someone else's responsibility. But as he watched, guest after guest passed by, too caught up in their own worlds to notice the child's quiet misery. The boy wiped his nose on his sleeve, his dark brown eyes framed by lashes that seemed too long for such a young face. There was maturity in his sadness, a weight that didn't belong on such small shoulders. Something in Ethan's chest twisted, a sensation he hadn't felt in years. He tried to ignore it, to remind himself that he didn't do emotions, didn't do children, didn't do messy. His life was a series of clean lines, uncalculated risks, not tear-streaked faces and deflated balloons. But the boy's sobs continued, soft and relentless, and Ethan found his polished loafers moving before his brain could object. He approached slowly, cautiously, as if the child were a delicate piece of code that could crash with one wrong input. Kneeling beside the fountain, his $5,000 suit forgotten as his knees brushed the cool stone, Ethan spoke in a voice softer than he'd used in years. "Hey there, buddy," he said, his tone gentle, almost foreign to his own ears. "You okay?" The boy looked up, his eyes glistening with tears, and for a moment, Ethan felt like he was staring into a mirror of his own childhood, a boy alone, overlooked, carrying a sadness too big for his small frame. And in that moment, something inside Ethan Carter, the untouchable CEO, began to crack. Ethan Carter knelt by the marble fountain, the cool Napa Valley breeze carrying the faint scent of roses and lavender, as the small boy's tear-streaked face turned toward him. Those dark brown eyes, framed by lashes that seemed to hold a world of sorrow, locked onto his, and for a fleeting moment, Ethan felt an inexplicable pull, a connection he couldn't name but couldn't ignore. The wedding reception hummed behind them, a blur of jazz melodies and clinking glasses. But here, in this quiet corner of Chateau Montelena's garden, it was just Ethan and the boy, two strangers bound by a shared moment of vulnerability. Welcome back to Legacy Stories, where every tale is a thread in the tapestry of the human heart. If you're just joining us, you're in for a journey that'll make you laugh, cry, and believe in second chances. To my incredible subscribers, your presence makes these stories shine. Thank you for being here. Today, we continue Ethan Carter's story, a man whose carefully curated life is about to unravel in the most unexpected way. Haven't subscribed yet? Hit that button, turn on notifications, and let's dive deeper into this tale of rediscovery. The boy's small frame shook with quiet sobs, his tiny black tuxedo slightly oversized, the cuffs pooling at his wrists. In his hands, he clutched a deflated balloon, its once bright red, now a limp, grayish husk, much like the hope in his eyes. Ethan, a man who'd built NeuralNet Innovations into a Silicon Valley powerhouse, felt utterly out of his depth. He didn't do children. His world was one of algorithms, boardrooms, and X-threads dissecting his company's every move. Yet here he was, crouching on garden pavement, his $5,000 suit forgotten, trying to find words for a situation he'd never trained for. "Hey, buddy," Ethan said again, his voice softer than it had been in years, stripped of the polished edge he used to command board meetings. "What's got you so sad?" The boy sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve, leaving a streak of damp fabric. "My juice fell," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the distant strains of the jazz quartet. He pointed to a shattered plastic cup near the fountain, its contents seeping into the grass. And I can't find my mommy." Ethan's chest tightened, a sensation he hadn't felt since his own childhood in a crumbling Chicago suburb, where he'd often sat alone, waiting for a parent who never came. He pushed the memory down, focusing on the boy. "That's a rough day," he said, offering a small smile. "Spilled juice and a missing mommy? That's more action than I've had all week." The boy's lips twitched, a hint of a smile breaking through his tears. Up close, Ethan noticed the details. The way the boy's curly hair fell over his forehead, the stubborn set of his chin, the way his eyes seemed to carry a quiet resilience. There was something familiar about him, something Ethan couldn't place but felt deep in his bones. "I'm Ethan," he said, extending a hand, then realizing a handshake might be too formal for a 5-year-old. He adjusted, resting his hand on his knee. "What's your name?" "Noah," the boy replied, his voice steadier now. He clutched the deflated balloon tighter, as if it were a lifeline. "Are you a prince? You look like a prince." Ethan almost laughed, the sound catching in his throat. A prince? Hardly. He was a man who'd traded fairy tales for stock auctions, who'd built an empire but lost something irreplaceable along the way. "No prince here," he said, his tone lighter than he felt. "Just a guy who knows what it's like to feel a little lost sometimes." The words surprised him, slipping out unbidden. He hadn't meant to say them, hadn't even realized he'd been thinking them. But Noah's eyes softened, and he nodded, as if Ethan's confession made perfect sense. "I got scared," Noah admitted, his voice small. "There were so many people, and Mommy was talking to the lady in the white dress, and I didn't know where to go, so I came here. It's quiet." Ethan nodded, understanding more than he wanted to admit. He'd come to this corner of the garden for the same reason, to escape the overwhelming joy of others, the kind of happiness that felt like a spotlight on his own emptiness. "Smart move," he said. "This is a good spot for quiet." But we've got to get you cleaned up before your mom finds you looking like you fought a juice monster and lost." Noah giggled, a sound so pure it cut through Ethan's usual armor. Like sunlight through fog. "The juice monster didn't fight fair," he said, his eyes brightening. "Juice monsters never do," Ethan replied, pulling a monogrammed handkerchief from his pocket. It was a gift from years ago, embroidered, with his initials in silver thread, a relic from a time when he'd believed in gestures of sentiment. He handed it to Noah, who took it with careful fingers, as if it were a treasure. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan," Noah said, wiping his eyes and nose, leaving smudges on the pristine fabric. "You're nice." Nice. The word hit Ethan harder than it should have. When was the last time someone had called him nice? He was called ruthless, brilliant, even visionary, but never nice. It felt like a compliment he didn't deserve, but desperately wanted to earn. "You're pretty nice yourself, Noah," he said, ruffling the boy's hair. "Now, tell me, where do you think your mom might be?" Noah pointed toward the crowd, his small hand trembling slightly. "She was over there, with the pretty lady, in the white dress." But then everyone was dancing, and I got scared. "We'll find her," Ethan said, surprised by the certainty in his voice. He stood, brushing off his knees, and offered his hand. "But first, let's fix that bow tie. Can't have you meeting your mom looking like you just escaped a pirate ship." Noah's eyes lit up. "Pirates? I love pirates. I have a sword at home. It's plastic, but it's really cool." "Then you're already cooler than me," Ethan said, straightening Noah's bow tie with a gentleness he didn't know he possessed. "I don't even have a plastic sword." "You can borrow mine," Noah offered solemnly. "But you have to say arg a lot." "Deal," Ethan sighed, chuckling. The sound felt foreign, rusty, like a machine he hadn't used in years. As he smoothed Noah's curls, he felt a warmth he hadn't known he was missing. The simple satisfaction of making someone else's moment better. No strings attached. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a sharp reminder of the world he'd momentarily forgotten. A notification from his assistant, Claire, flashed on the screen. Asterisk. Urgent. Investors demanding a call re-X thread. Stock down 3%. The viral post accusing NeuralNet of data misuse was gaining traction, with hashtags like #AIEthics and #NeuralNet Scandal trending on X in 2025. A single thread could tank a company's reputation overnight, and Ethan's team was scrambling to contain the fallout. Normally, he'd be on the phone, barking orders, drafting a statement to post on X himself. But as he looked at Noah, clutching his handkerchief and smiling up at him, Ethan did something unprecedented. He silenced his phone and shoved it back in his pocket. "There," he said, stepping back to admire his work. "Now you look like the prince, not me." "We both look like princes," Noah declared, his voice firm, "like we're in the same kingdom." The words landed like a quiet revelation. When had Ethan last felt like he belonged anywhere? His life was a series of boardrooms, private jets, and penthouse solitude, each success isolating him further. But here, with this small boy who trusted him without question, he felt a flicker of something he buried long ago connection. "Noah, baby, where are you?" The voice sliced through the garden, urgent and laced with panic, the kind only a mother's love could produce. "Noah, oh God, please." "That's my mommy." Noah's face lit up, his tears forgotten. He jumped to his feet, the deflated balloon bouncing against his leg. "Mommy, I'm here." Ethan stood, brushing off his suit, preparing to hand Noah over to a grateful parent and slip back into his carefully curated solitude. He rehearsed the polite smile, the nod, the quick exit. But as the figure emerged from behind the rosebush, as the voice became a face, the world stopped spinning. Lila Harper stood on the garden path, her blue dress catching the fading sunlight, her dark hair framing a face that was both achingly familiar and breathtakingly new. Her high cheekbones, her full lips, the way her eyes widened in disbelief. It was her, the woman who'd once been his everything, the one who'd walked out of his life 5 years ago without a word. Ethan's breath caught, his heart pounding, as if he were facing a hostile takeover with no strategy in sight. "Lila," he whispered, the name tasting like a memory he'd tried to erase. Noah ran to her, wrapping his arms around her legs. "Mommy, this is my friend Ethan. He helped me when I was sad, and he gave me his fancy napkin, and he said we're princes." Lila's eyes never left Ethan's, a storm of emotions swirling in their depths. Shock, fear, and something that might have been longing, quickly buried under a mother's protective instinct. "Ethan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, as if saying his name might summon a ghost. The garden, the wedding, the world itself faded away. All that remained was the woman he'd loved, the boy who'd called him a prince, and a truth that was about to shatter everything Ethan thought he knew. The Napa Valley sun dipped below the horizon, casting a twilight glow over the Chateau Montelena garden, where Ethan Carter stood frozen, his heart pounding like a war drum. Lila Harper's eyes, wide with disbelief, bore into him, her simple navy dress catching the last rays of light like a beacon in the gathering dusk. Noah, oblivious to the storm brewing between the adults, clung to his mother's legs, waving Ethan's monogrammed handkerchief like a tiny flag of truce. The words asterisk, "He's mine, isn't he?" hung unspoken in Ethan's throat, heavy as a verdict, as the weight of 5 lost years crashed over him like a tidal wave. Welcome back to Legacy Stories, where every tale unearths the truths we bury and the loves we rediscover. If you're new here, you're stepping into a narrative that'll challenge your heart and spark your hope. To my devoted subscribers, your support weaves these stories into something magical. Thank you. Today, we dive into the heart of Ethan Carter's journey, where a chance encounter at a wedding becomes a reckoning with the past. Haven't subscribed? Hit that button, turn on notifications, and let's unravel this moment of truth together. Lila's voice, sharp with panic moments ago, now softened to a trembling whisper. "Ethan." The single word carried a lifetime of unspoken pain. A history Ethan had tried to erase with boardroom victories and billion-dollar deals. He couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only stare at the woman who'd once been his world, the one who'd vanished from their San Francisco apartment 5 years ago, leaving nothing but a void where his heart used to be. "Mommy, this is my friend Ethan." Noah's voice was bright, oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. He tugged at Lila's dress, holding up the handkerchief. "He helped me when I was sad, and he said we're princes in the same kingdom." Lila's gaze flickered to Noah, her expression softening for a moment before returning to Ethan, a storm of emotion swirling in her dark eyes, shock, fear, and something deeper, quickly masked by a mother's protective instinct. "Noah, honey," she said, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. "Go sit on that bench over there, okay? Mommy needs to talk to Ethan. Just for a minute, baby." Noah, sensing the shift in the air with the uncanny intuition of a child, nodded. "Okay, Mommy." He skipped to a nearby stone bench, still clutching the handkerchief, his small frame silhouetted against the fairy lights strung through the roses. The distance gave Ethan and Lila a fragile bubble of privacy, but it did nothing to ease the chasm of silence stretching between them. Ethan's mind raced, piecing together fragments of the moment. Noah's eyes, so like his own, the stubborn tilt of his chin, the way he'd trusted Ethan so easily, it was all too familiar, like staring into a childhood photo he'd tucked away in a drawer. His voice, when it finally came, was raw, cracked like a teenager's. "Lila, what is this?" Her composure faltered, her lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. She crossed her arms, a shield against the past. "You look good, Ethan," she said finally, her tone carefully neutral, the kind of voice you'd use to greet a stranger at a networking event. "Success suits you. Don't." The word came out harsher than he intended, slicing through the polite facade. "Don't do that. Don't pretend this is just normal." He took a step closer, his polished loafers sinking into the soft earth. "You disappeared, Lila. 5 years ago you walked out. No note, no explanation, no goodbye. And now—" He glanced at Noah, who was swinging his legs on the bench, humming a tune. "Now this—" Lila's eyes flashed, a spark of the fire he remembered from their late-night debates in their cramped apartment, when they dreamed of a future bigger than themselves. "What do you want me to say, Ethan? That seeing you here feels like a lightning bolt to the chest. That I've spent 5 years trying to forget you existed." Her voice trembled, but she held his gaze, unyielding. "You did a damn good job of it," he shot back, the hurt he buried surfacing like a long dormant volcano. "You left me, Lila. You left us. I woke up one morning, and you were gone. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Her composure cracked, a fissure in her armor. "I left because I had to," she said, her voice low but firm. "You were never going to choose me over your empire, Ethan. We both knew it." "That's not true," he started, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. He remembered those final months' missed dinners, late-night calls with investors, the relentless drive to make NeuralNet a household name. He'd been so close to a breakthrough, a deal that would cement his company as a leader in AI analytics. But at what cost, isn't it? Lila's voice rose. Then she caught herself, glancing at Noah to ensure he wasn't listening. "How many times did you cancel our plans for a quick meeting? How many nights did I wait for you, only to eat alone? And that last time—" Her voice broke and she looked away, her hands clenching into fists. "I found out I was pregnant. Ethan, I went to the doctor alone because you were in Tokyo closing a deal. I called you, left a voicemail. You never called back." Ethan's stomach dropped, a memory surfacing like a shard of glass. He'd been in a boardroom, negotiating with a Japanese tech conglomerate, his phone silenced. He'd seen her missed call, meant to call back, but the deal had consumed him. By the time he'd surfaced, days had passed, and Lila was gone. "I didn't know," he said quietly, the weight of his failure settling on his shoulders. "You didn't want to know." She countered, her voice sharp but laced with pain. "You were building NeuralNet, building your legacy. I was just collateral damage." The accusation hit its mark, each word a truth he couldn't dodge. He'd told himself he was building a future for them, but somewhere along the way, the future had eclipsed the present. He looked at Noah again, really looked at him. The dark curls, the stubborn chin, the way he tilted his head when he was thinking. It was like seeing his own childhood photos, his father's eyes staring back at him. The realization hit like a physical blow. "He's mine, isn't he?" The question slipped out, barely a whisper, but it hung between them like a guillotine. Lila's silence was answer enough, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Ethan's knees felt weak, his carefully constructed world crumbling. "How long have you known?" "Since the moment I saw his eyes," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "They're your eyes, Ethan. Your father's eyes." 5 years. She'd kept his son from him for 5 years. Anger flared, hot and raw, but it was tangled with something deeper: guilt, regret, a longing he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "You kept him from me," he said, his voice hoarse. 5 years, Lila. Why? "I kept him safe," she said, her tone fierce. "Safe from the man you were becoming, the one who valued stock prices over people, who couldn't see the woman who loved him drowning in his ambition." The truth was a tidal wave, washing away his defenses. Ethan wanted to argue, to say she was wrong, but the memories were too clear. The missed dinners, the unanswered calls, the nights he'd chosen his office over their bed. He'd been so focused on proving himself, on escaping the shadow of his broken childhood, that he'd lost sight of what mattered. "You didn't give me a chance," he said, his voice breaking. "You didn't let me try. Lila's laugh was bitter, but her eyes were wet. "I spent 2 years trying to reach you, Ethan. 2 years watching you disappear into NeuralNet. When I realized I was pregnant, I had to face the truth. You weren't ready to be a father. You weren't even ready to be a partner." He closed his eyes, the weight of her words pressing down on him. She was right, and he hated it. He'd been so consumed by his vision for NeuralNet, especially now, in 2025, with the AI industry under scrutiny and competitors like XAI breathing down his neck, that he'd forgotten how to be human. His phone buzzed again, likely another alert about the X thread accusing NeuralNet of data misuse, but he ignored it. For the first time in years, the crisis could wait. "Lila, He didn't know how to finish the sentence. Apologize? Beg? Explain? Nothing felt adequate in the face of the son he hadn't known existed. The woman he'd failed. Lila glanced at Noah, who was now tracing patterns in the gravel with a stick, blissfully unaware of the storm between his parents. "I've been a single mom in a world that's not kind to us," she said quietly. "In 2025, with rent skyrocketing and childcare costs eating half my income as a freelance graphic designer, I did what I had to do to give Noah a stable life. I couldn't wait for you to decide if you wanted to show up." The mention of her struggles hit Ethan like a punch. He'd been so focused on his own battles navigating investor demands, countering viral X posts, staying ahead in the AI race, that he'd never considered what her life had become. "I didn't know," he said again, the words feeble against her reality. "You didn't ask," she replied, her voice softer now, but no less devastating. She took a step closer, her eyes searching his. The Ethan I fell in love with, the one who read poetry under the stars, who dreamed of a life bigger than money. He was already disappearing. I couldn't let Noah grow up waiting for a father who might never come. Ethan's throat tightened, the truth cutting deeper than any boardroom defeat. He looked at Noah, his son, and felt a mix of awe and terror. "I want to know him," he said, his voice barely audible. "I want to be something to him." Lila's expression softened, but her eyes held a warning. "If you do this, Ethan, it can't be halfway. It can't be a press release or a part-time role when your schedule allows. It has to be real." He nodded, his mind reeling with the weight of it all. The wedding music swelled in the background, a reminder of the world moving on while he stood still. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted, "but I want to try." Lila studied him, her gaze piercing, as if weighing the man he was against the man he'd been. "We'll see," she said finally. "For Noah's sake, we'll see." As Noah skipped back to them, his small hand reaching for Ethan's, the billionaire CEO felt something shift inside him, a crack in the armor he'd worn for years, letting in a sliver of light he wasn't sure he was ready for. The fairy lights twinkled above the Chateau Montelena garden, casting a soft glow over the small table where Ethan Carter sat, a slice of vanilla wedding cake before him, its sugary frosting glistening like a promise. Across from him, Noah, his vase, newly discovered son, chattered excitedly about sparkler candles, his tiny hands waving Ethan's monogrammed handkerchief like a pirate's flag. Lila Harper watched them, her navy dress catching the evening breeze, her eyes wary but softening, as Noah's laughter filled the air. For the first time in years, Ethan, the billionaire CEO of NeuralNet Innovations, felt a flicker of something he'd forgotten: joy, untainted by ambition, pure as the child's smile before him. Welcome back to Legacy Stories, where every Tale reminds us that the heart can find its way home, no matter how far it's strayed. If you're new here, you're stepping into a journey of redemption and rediscovery that'll leave you breathless. To my incredible subscribers, your support lights up these narratives. Thank you for being part of this family. Today, we follow Ethan Carter as he takes his first tentative steps into fatherhood, grappling with a past that haunts him and a future that terrifies him. Not subscribed yet? Hit that button, turn on notifications, and let's dive into this chapter of connection and courage. Ethan's fork hovered over the cake, his eyes fixed on Noah as the boy described the wedding cake's magic. Sparklers with the earnestness only a 5-year-old could muster. "They're like stars, Mr. Ethan," Noah said, his dark curls bouncing as he gestured. "Real stars, but on a cake. Do you think they're magic?" Ethan's lips curved into a smile, a genuine one that felt foreign after years of practice. Grins for boardrooms and investors. "You know, Noah, I think you might be onto something. Stars on a cake? That's got to be some kind of wizardry." He glanced at Lila, expecting a roll of her eyes, but she was watching him with a quiet intensity, as if searching for the man she'd once loved beneath the polished exterior of the CEO. The moment felt fragile, like a line of code that could crash with one wrong input. Ethan was out of his depth, a man who'd mastered algorithms and acquisitions, but knew nothing about children, let alone being a father. Yet, sitting here, sharing a slice of cake with a boy who shared his eyes, his chin, his very DNA, Ethan felt a warmth spreading through him, thawing the ice he'd built around his heart. Noah scooped a dollop of frosting onto his finger, grinning as he licked it off. "This is the best cake ever." "Mommy, can we have cake like this at home?" Lila's smile was tired but warm, the kind of smile that carried the weight of single motherhood in a world where rent in San Francisco ate half her freelance graphic design income. "Maybe for your birthday, buddy," she said, ruffling his hair, "but you'd have to promise not to get frosting all over the couch again." Noah giggled, and Ethan felt a pang of envy for the easy intimacy between them. Lila had been Noah's everything for 5 years, while Ethan had been a ghost, unaware of the son who'd been growing up without him. The realization stung, but it was overshadowed by a new, unfamiliar feeling, a fierce desire to be part of this boy's life, to earn a place in his kingdom of pirates and magic cakes. "Mr. Ethan," Noah said, his voice pulling Ethan back to the moment. "Do you like pirates? I told you I have a sword at home. You could be my first mate." Ethan chuckled, the sound rusty but real. "A first mate, huh? I don't know much about sailing the high seas, but I'm a quick learner. What does a first mate do?" "Og, a lot and help find treasure," Noah explained, his eyes wide with seriousness. "And you have to wear an eye patch sometimes." "Do you have an eye patch?" "Not yet," Ethan admitted, leaning forward. "But I bet we could find one. Maybe even a treasure map." Noah's face lit up, and he launched into a story about a magical cat in his neighborhood who he was sure guarded a secret pirate hoard. Ethan listened, nodding at all the right moments, marveling at how easily Noah's imagination filled the space between them. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about NeuralNet stock prices or the X-thread accusing his company of data misuse, which had now amassed 3.8 million views. His phone, still silenced in his pocket, felt like a relic from another life. Lila watched them, her expression unreadable but softer than before. "You're good with him," she said quietly when Noah paused to take another bite of cake. "He doesn't usually warm up to people so fast." Ethan's throat tightened. "I don't know what I'm doing," he confessed, his voice low so Noah wouldn't hear. I didn't even know he existed until an hour ago." "That's what makes it impressive," Lila said, her eyes meeting his. "You're listening to him. You're here." The weight of her words settled over him. Being here was something he'd failed at with her, 5 years ago. He remembered those days, the blur of acquisition deals and late-night strategy sessions. When he'd chosen NeuralNet over her time and again, he told himself he was building a future for them, but he'd been building a wall instead, brick by brick, until she'd had no choice but to walk away. His mind drifted to his own childhood in a rundown Chicago suburb, where his father's absence had been a constant ache. Ethan had sworn he'd never be that man, the one who left his family waiting. Yet here he was, facing a son he hadn't known existed, a son who deserved better than a father who lived for boardroom victories. The fear of failing Noah, of repeating his father's mistakes, gnawed at him, a quiet terror beneath the warmth of the moment. "Mommy, can Mr. Ethan come play pirates with us?" Noah's voice broke through Ethan's thoughts, his eyes bright with hope. He said he'd learned to say, "Og." Lila hesitated, her gaze flicking to Ethan. "We'll see, buddy," she said, her tone careful. "Mr. Ethan's probably pretty busy." The words were a subtle challenge, a reminder of the man she'd known, the one who'd chosen work over love. Ethan felt the weight of her doubt, but also a spark of determination. "I'd like that, Noah," he said, looking at the boy. "Maybe we can find some treasure together. What do you say?" "Yes." Noah pumped his fist, frosting smearing across his cheek. "You're going to be the best first mate, Mr. Ethan." Ethan laughed, a sound that felt lighter each time it escaped him. He caught Lila's eye, searching for a sign of permission, of hope. "I mean it," he said, quietly. "I want to try Lila, not as the CEO, not as the guy on the cover of Forbes, but as his father." Lila's expression softened, but her voice held a steel edge. "You hurt me, Ethan, more than I thought I could be hurt. And I won't let you hurt him." "I know," he said, his voice raw. "I know I don't have the right to ask for anything. But please, let me try to be better." She studied him, her eyes searching for the man she'd once believed in, the one who'd read poetry under the stars and dreamed of a life beyond spreadsheets. "It's not about trying," she said finally. "It's about showing up, every day. Not when it's convenient, not when the markets are stable, but every single day." Ethan nodded, the weight of her words settling into his bones. His phone buzzed again, a reminder of the world waiting for him, investors demanding answers, a PR team scrambling to counter the X thread that was now trending under hashtag #NeuralNetEthics. In 2025, a single post could unravel years of work, especially with the tech industry under scrutiny for AI ethics violations. NeuralNet was facing a potential lawsuit, and Ethan's absence was likely causing panic in his C-suite. But for the first time, he didn't care. "Let's dance," Noah declared, hopping off his chair and grabbing Ethan's hand. "You said you're not a prince, but you can dance like one, right?" Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "I'm not much of a dancer, buddy," he admitted, glancing at Lila for rescue. She raised an eyebrow, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You'll figure it out," she said, her tone lighter than before. "He's persistent." Before Ethan could protest, Noah was tugging him toward the dance floor, where couples swayed to a jazzy cover of Fly Me to the Moon. Ethan, who hadn't danced since a college party a lifetime ago, felt a surge of panic. But Noah's fearless enthusiasm was infectious. "You just put me on your shoulders," Noah instructed, climbing onto a chair to reach Ethan's back. "And spin." Ethan hesitated. Ben lifted Noah onto his shoulders, the boy's small hands gripping his hair. As he spun gently, Noah's laughter rang out, a sound that drowned out the jazz quartet and the chatter of Silicon Valley elites. Ethan caught glimpses of the other guests, some smiling, others whispering, a few snapping photos for X, no doubt captioning them with something like hashtag billionaire dad goals. For once, Ethan didn't care about the optics. Lucas Bennett appeared. Beside them, his grin wide. "Now this is the Ethan I remember," he said, clapping a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Who's the little guy?" "This is Noah," Ethan said, the words feeling surreal but right. My son. Lucas's." Eyes widened, his wine glass pausing midair. "Your son?" "Ethan, you never said. I just found out," Ethan admitted, spinning Noah again to avoid further questions. Noah squealed, demanding faster spins, and Ethan obliged. His heart lighter than it had been in years. As the song ended, Noah slid down, breathless and beaming. "You're good at dancing, Mr. Ethan. Can we do it again?" "Give him a break, Noah," Lila said, approaching with a smile that held a trace of warmth. "He's not used to pirate dances." Ethan set Noah down, his chest tight with a mix of joy and fear. He looked at Lila, searching for a sign that this moment could be more than a fleeting reprieve. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for letting me be here." Lila's smile faded slightly, her eyes guarded. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "This is just the beginning, Ethan. Noah deserves more than a moment." "I know," he said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. "I want to be more than a moment." Noah tugged at his hand, oblivious to the weight of the conversation. "Mr. Ethan, come see the cake again. It's got more sparklers now." Ethan laughed, letting Noah lead him back to the table, but Lila's words echoed in his mind. Being a father wasn't about grand gestures or viral moments. It was about showing up, day after day, in a world where his company's stock was plummeting and his phone buzzed with crises. As he watched Noah point excitedly at the cake, Ethan knew one thing for certain. He'd never wanted anything as badly as he wanted to be the man Noah deserved. Ethan Carter stood in the doorway of his San Francisco penthouse, the city skyline glittering beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a testament to the empire he'd built with NeuralNet Innovations. But tonight, the sleek marble countertops and minimalist decor felt like a museum of a life he no longer recognized. His phone, silenced for the first time in years, lay untouched on the counter, its screen dark despite the flurry of notifications about a plummeting stock price and a viral X thread threatening to unravel his company's reputation. In the silence, Ethan's mind was filled with the sound of Noah's laughter, the weight of Lila Harper's cautious gaze, and the realization that he'd been given a chance to become someone new, someone his son could call Daddy. Welcome back to Legacy Stories, where every tale is a reminder that it's never too late to rewrite your own narrative. If you're new here, you're joining a journey that'll tug at your heart and inspire your soul. To my incredible subscribers, your support brings these stories to life. Thank you for being part of this family. Today, we follow Ethan Carter as he stands at a crossroads, choosing between the empire he's built and the family he's just discovered. Not subscribed yet? Hit that button, turn on notifications, and let's witness Ethan's transformation. Together, Ethan sank into the leather sofa, his tie loosened, his polished exterior unraveling like a poorly coded algorithm. The events of the wedding replayed in his mind. Noah's infectious giggle as they spun on the dance floor, Lila's guarded hope the moment he'd said, "My son," to Lucas and felt the words settle into his bones. For years, he'd measured success in stock prices and Forbes rankings. But sitting at that small table, sharing cake with Noah and Lila, he'd felt richer than any billion-dollar deal could make him. His penthouse, once a sanctuary of silence, now felt oppressive. The walls, adorned with abstract art, worth more than most people's homes, seemed to mock him with their cold perfection. He thought of his childhood in a Chicago suburb, where his mother's tired smile and his father's absence had taught him that love was a luxury for those who could afford to fail. He'd vowed to escape that life, to build something that mattered. NeuralNet was his monument, a testament to his refusal to be the boy who waited for a father who never came. But in building it, he'd become that father to Noah, a ghost in a life he hadn't even known existed. Ethan's gaze fell on a framed photo on the shelf, one he rarely looked at. Him and Lila, 5 years ago, laughing under a streetlight in San Francisco's Mission District. Her hair was longer then, her smile unguarded, his own face alight with the joy he'd forgotten how to feel. They'd been dreamers, reading poetry in dive bars, planning a future where success didn't mean sacrifice. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost that Ethan, buried him under merger negotiations and ex-posts about NeuralNet's latest AI breakthrough. His phone buzzed, a reminder of the world he'd ignored since the wedding. A glance at the screen showed a dozen missed calls from his coup, Claire, and a flood of X notifications. The viral thread accusing NeuralNet of unethical data practices had escalated, with influencers and tech bloggers piling on, using hashtags like #AIEthics and #NeuralNetScandal. In 2025, a single post could spark a PR crisis, and this one was threatening to tank NeuralNet's stock further. Investors were demanding an emergency meeting, and Claire's latest text read, "Ethan, where are you? We need you now." He set the phone down, his hands trembling. Normally, he'd be on a call, strategizing damage control, crafting a statement for X to shift the narrative. But tonight, all he could think about was Noah's question, "Can we play pirates?" And Lila's challenge, "It has to be real." For the first time in his adult life, Ethan turned his phone off completely, the silence louder than any boardroom victory. He stood, pacing the penthouse, his mind racing. A memory surfaced. Lila, 5 years ago, her voice breaking as she begged him to stay for dinner, to be present. He'd been on his way to a meeting, promising to make it up to her, but he never did. She'd found out she was pregnant, gone to the doctor alone, left a voicemail he'd ignored. The guilt was a weight he couldn't shake, but it was mingled with something new hope, fragile but fierce, that he could be more than the man who'd let her down. Ethan opened his laptop, not to check stock reports, but to search for something he'd never considered before: parenting resources. In 2025, the internet was a treasure trove of virtual courses, and he found an online workshop titled Parenting 101, Building Bonds with Your Child. It was hosted by a Bay Area therapist, part of the growing work-life balance movement, sweeping corporate America, where executives were rethinking priorities after the Great Resignation 2.0, at employees leaving toxic workplaces en masse. Ethan signed up, his heart pounding as he clicked enroll. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. The next morning, he texted Lila, his fingers hesitating over the keys. "Can we meet for coffee? I'd like to see Noah again." "And you?" Her reply came an hour later, cautious but open. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Blue Bottle on Polk Street. Noah will be there." The coffee shop was a microcosm of San Francisco in 2025, tech workers tapping on laptops, influencers filming X content, and baristas juggling oat milk lattes. Lila sat at a corner table, Noah beside her, coloring a pirate ship with crayons. Ethan approached, his usual confidence replaced by a nervous energy he hadn't felt since his first pitch to investors. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than he meant it to be. Noah looked up, his face breaking into a grin. "Mr. Ethan, did you bring an eye patch?" Ethan chuckled, pulling a small gift bag from his jacket. "Not quite, but I got you something." He handed Noah a plastic pirate sword, bought on impulse from a toy store. Noah's eyes widened, and he brandished the sword with a gleeful, "Arg!" Lila's smile was tentative, but her eyes held a flicker of warmth. "You didn't have to do that," she said, sipping her coffee. "I wanted to," Ethan replied, sitting across from them. "I want to be part of this, whatever that looks like." They talked, the conversation light but weighted with unspoken history. Lila shared snippets of her life freelancing as a graphic designer, Working late nights to afford Noah's preschool, navigating the skyrocketing costs of living in a city where even a modest apartment felt like a luxury. Ethan listened, really. Listened, something he hadn't done in years. He asked about Noah's favorite books, his love for superheroes. The neighbor's cat, he swore, was magic. Each detail was a thread, weaving him into a life he'd missed. "I'm trying to figure this out," Ethan admitted when Noah ran to the counter to show his sword to a barista. "I don't know how to be a dad, Lila. I'm terrified I'll screw it up." "You will," she said bluntly, but her tone softened. "We all do at first, but it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's hard." Ethan nodded, her words echoing the therapist's advice from the online workshop he'd started that morning. "I'm learning," he said. "I want to be there for him, for both of you." Layla's gaze was steady, searching. The Ethan I knew 5 years ago would have checked his phone 3 times by now. "You haven't touched it." He smiled, a little sheepish. "It's been buzzing for an hour. I haven't looked." Her eyebrows rose, a spark of surprise in her eyes. "Are you feeling okay?" "I'm feeling different," he said honestly. "Like I've been sleepwalking for years and I'm finally waking up." Lila didn't respond, but her expression softened, a crack in her armor. Noah returned, brandishing his sword, and the conversation shifted to pirate adventures. Ethan let himself sink into the moment, laughing as Noah narrated a tale of battling a juice monster at sea. Later that week, Ethan faced a different battle. A shareholder meeting at NeuralNet's sleek headquarters in Palo Alto. The room was tense, with investors grilling him about the X thread and a 5% stock drop. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his usual commanding presence tempered by a new resolve. "We've built a great company," he said, his voice steady, "but we've lost sight of what matters. Starting today, we're rethinking our culture more. Flexibility, more humanity. If we want to lead in AI, we need to lead with integrity, not just innovation." The room fell silent, stunned. Claire, his pew, stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. An investor muttered about soft leadership, but Ethan didn't care. For the first time, he saw his company not as a monument to his ambition, but as a collection of people who deserve better. As he left the meeting, his phone lit up with a text from Lila. Asterisk. Noah's asking when he can see his first mate again. Saturday? Park? Ethan's heart lifted, a smile breaking through. He typed back. Asterisk. I'll be there. ARG included. Asterisk. The man who'd once lived for the next deal was starting to live for something else. Moments with a boy who called him Mr. Ethan, and the possibility of earning back a place in Lila's heart. The San Francisco sky was a canvas of cotton candy pink and gold as Ethan Carter pushed Noah on a swing at Golden Gate Park, the boys' laughter rising like a melody over the hum of a late summer festival. Lila Harper stood nearby, her arms crossed but her smile soft, watching as Ethan, once a stranger to his own heart, played pirate with their son. The air was alive with the scent of grilled corn and the chatter of families, a vibrant snapshot of 2025 America, where community festivals had become a refuge from the grind of economic uncertainty and digital noise. For Ethan, this moment, Noah's small hands gripping the swing. Lila's cautious hope felt like the first real treasure he'd ever found. Welcome back to Legacy Stories, where every tale reminds us that the greatest journeys begin with a single step toward what truly matters. If you're new here, you're joining a narrative that'll warm your heart and spark your hope. To my incredible subscribers, your support weaves these stories into something unforgettable. Thank you for being here. Today, we close Ethan Carter's chapter, a story of rediscovery, redemption, and the magic of second chances. Not subscribe? Hit that button, turn on notifications, and let's sail into this final chapter together. Ethan steadied the swing. Noah's giggles filling the air as he soared higher. "Faster, Daddy!" the boy shouted, the word Daddy still hitting Ethan like a revelation, a gift he hadn't earned but was determined to deserve. It had been 2 weeks since the wedding, 2 weeks since Ethan's world had shifted on its axis, revealing a son he hadn't known and a love he'd thought lost forever. Each day since had been a lesson in showing up, not just for board meetings or ex-posts, but for the small, messy moments that made life real. "Careful, Captain." "Noah," Ethan called, adopting the pirate voice Noah loved. "We don't want to fly off to Neverland just yet." He caught Lila's eye, her smile a mix of amusement and something warmer, something that hinted at possibility. Her navy sundress swayed in the breeze, and for a moment, Ethan saw the woman he'd fallen in love with 5 years ago, before ambition had built walls between them. The festival buzzed around them, families playing games, vendors selling artisanal ice cream, and a local band playing covers of 2020's hits. In 2025, these community events were a lifeline, a counterpoint to the economic pressures of rising costs and tech industry layoffs. Ethan had read an X thread that morning about the Great Resignation 2.0, where workers were leaving high-pressure jobs for lives with more meaning. It had struck a chord, echoing his own shift from a life measured in stock prices to one counted in moments like this. "Daddy, look." Noah pointed to a booth where kids were painting wooden treasure chests. "Can we make one for our pirate gold?" Ethan grinned, lifting Noah off the swing. "Lead the way, Captain." As they walked, Noah's small hand slipped into his, the trust in that grip unraveling years of Ethan's carefully constructed solitude. Lila followed, her presence a quiet anchor, her silence speaking volumes about the trust she was still learning to give Dot at the booth. Noah dove into the activity, splashing paint with abandon, while Ethan helped him glue on plastic gems. "This is for our treasure," Noah declared. "You can keep your gold in it, Daddy." "My gold, huh?" Ethan said, his voice soft. "I think you're the real treasure here, buddy." Noah beamed, paint smudging his cheek, and Ethan felt his chest tighten. He'd spent years chasing wealth, but this messy, joyful moment was worth more than any deal he'd ever closed. Lila watched, her expression softening further. "He's been talking about you non-stop," she said quietly. "He wants to teach you how to make pirate pancakes." "Pirate pancakes?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What's the secret ingredient?" "Chocolate chips," Noah chimed in, not looking up from his treasure chest. "And you have to yell arg when you flip them." Ethan laughed, the sound freer than it had been in years. "I'm in, but I might need a lesson or two." Lila's smile held a trace of the old warmth, but her eyes were still cautious. "You're doing okay so far," she said. "But it's not just about pancakes, Ethan. It's about being there when he's sick, when he's scared, when he needs you." "I know," Ethan said, his voice steady. "I'm learning." Later, as Noah ran off to show his treasure chest to another kid, Ethan and Lila sat on a bench, the festival's energy swirling around them. "I've been thinking about what you said," Ethan began, his hands clasped tightly. "About showing up. I want to do this right, Lila. For Noah. For U.S. Lila's gaze was steady, searching. "I want to believe you," she said. "But the Ethan I knew lived for his company. What happens when NeuralNet needs you more than we do?" The question cut deep, especially with NeuralNet facing a crisis. A competitor had just launched a rival AI platform, threatening NeuralNet's market share, and the X thread accusing them of data misuse was now fueling a potential class action lawsuit. Ethan's team was in panic mode, demanding his attention, but he'd spent the morning at the park instead, pushing Noah on a swing. "I'm trying to change that," he said. "I've delegated more to my team. I signed up for a parenting workshop online. It's cheesy, I know, but I'm serious about this. Lila's eyebrows rose, a spark of surprise in her eyes. A parenting workshop? You? Yeah, he admitted, a sheepish grin breaking through. It's part of this whole work-life balance thing everyone's talking about on X. I figured if I can learn to code AI, I can learn to be a dad. She laughed, a sound that felt like a gift. You're full of surprises, Ethan Carter. They were interrupted by Noah's return, his treasure chest now a chaotic masterpiece of paint and glitter. Daddy, Mommy, come see the music, he said, tugging them toward the stage where a band was starting a new set. Ethan lifted Noah onto his shoulders, the boys' laughter vibrating through him as they joined the crowd dot as the band played. Ethan caught sight of a flyer for a local conference on redefining success in the tech age, part of the growing movement to prioritize mental health and family over corporate grind. He'd been invited to speak, but had declined, choosing this day with Noah and Lila instead. It was a small choice, but it felt like a victory, a step toward the man he wanted to be. Daddy, it's magic, Noah whispered, pointing to the stage lights flickering like stars. Ethan tightened his grip on Noah's legs, his heart full. You're right, buddy, he said. Real magic. Lila stood beside him, her shoulder brushing his, and for a moment, Ethan dared to hope that this could be their new normal. We have a lot to figure out, she said quietly, her eyes on the stage. It's going to be complicated. No, Ethan replied, his voice steady, but I'm here. However long it takes. She studied him in the twilight, her gaze weighing his words against 5 years of broken promises. Okay, she said finally. We can try. As the festival wound down, Noah dozing against Ethan's shoulder, Lila touched his arm. You're different, she said softly. The same, but different. Like you're remembering who you used to be. Ethan nodded, the weight of her words settling into him. I'm trying to, he said. For him. For you. They walked to Lila's car, Noah's small hand waving sleepily from Ethan's arms. As they drove away, Ethan felt a hope he hadn't known in years. Not the calculated optimism of a CEO, but the raw, terrifying hope of a man given a second chance at love. This story of Ethan Carter, Lila Harper, and Noah is a testament to the power of second chances and the courage it takes to rewrite one story. At its core, it's about rediscovery, not just of love or family, but of the self we lose in the pursuit of success. Ethan's journey reflects a universal truth. True. Wealth lies not in what we build, but in who we become and who we share our lives with. In 2025, as America grapples with economic uncertainty and a cultural shift toward prioritizing connection over ambition, Ethan's choice to put family first is a powerful reminder that it's never too late to choose love, presence, and humanity over profit. The lessons here are profound. Forgiveness, both of others and ourselves, is a path to healing. Vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness. And the smallest moments, a child's laughter, a shared glance, can redefine a life. Ethan's transformation challenges us to ask, what are we sacrificing for success, and is it worth the cost? Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do in Ethan's shoes? How have you balanced ambition and love in your own life? If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs a reminder that second chances are real. Subscribe to Legacy Stories for more tales that inspire, uplift, and remind us what truly matters. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that might change your perspective. Thank you for joining us. Until next time, keep your heart open to the magic of new beginnings.